I'm Lydia, 32 female. I live in a city I once loved, in an apartment that now feels more like a museum of a life that wasn't mine. As a senior marketing manager for a major tech firm, my entire career is built on understanding strategies, analyzing data, and executing flawless campaigns, but I never imagined I'd have to use those skills to dismantle my own future. This is the story of how I discovered that the wedding I was planning was just a marketing campaign for my mother-in-law's ego, and my fiancé was her star employee. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. The ring was perfect. It was a cushion-cut diamond, elegant and timeless, sitting in a delicate pavé setting that sparkled under the dim lights of the rooftop restaurant where Jacob proposed. He had gotten everything right that night: my favorite flowers, the champagne I loved, and a speech that was just the right mix of heartfelt and humorous. Jacob, a financial analyst who saw the world in numbers and spreadsheets, wasn't always the most romantic man, but when he put his mind to it, he could create a perfect moment. That night, looking into his earnest blue eyes, I saw a future I desperately wanted. It was a future of partnership, of building a life together, of lazy Sunday mornings and shared dreams. I said yes without a moment's hesitation, my voice thick with happy tears. The other diners applauded, and for a few blissful hours I was floating. The first shadow appeared just 2 days later. We had dinner with his mother, Megan, to celebrate. Megan was a force of nature. As one of the city's top luxury real estate agents, she moved through the world with an unshakable confidence that bordered on arrogance. She was always impeccably dressed, her silver blonde hair coiffed to perfection, and she had a way of speaking that made her opinions sound like undeniable facts. When I showed her the ring, her first comment wasn't about its beauty, but its investment potential. A VVS one, I assume. Jacob knows better than to skimp on clarity, she said, holding my hand in a grip that was surprisingly strong. I mumbled something about it being beautiful, but she was already moving on. Now, the wedding, she announced, her eyes gleaming. We have to start planning immediately. The best venues are booked 2 years in advance. Jacob just smiled and squeezed my hand. Mom's an expert at this stuff, he whispered to me, as if that was supposed to be comforting. In the beginning, I tried to see her enthusiasm as a positive thing. I was busy at work, launching a huge campaign for a new software suite, and the idea of having an experienced hand to help with the wedding felt like a blessing. I bought a stack of bridal magazines and started a Pinterest board, eagerly pinning photos of rustic barn weddings, wildflower bouquets, and simple, elegant dresses. I imagined an intimate ceremony with our closest friends and family, somewhere with character and warmth, followed by a reception with great food and a live band that played more soul than schmaltz. When I showed my ideas to Jacob, he nodded along. Looks great, honey. Whatever you want. But when I tried to show Megan my Pinterest board over brunch the following Sunday, she gave it a cursory glance and produced her own leather-bound planner. Quaint, she said, tapping a perfectly manicured nail on my laptop screen. But a wedding is a statement. It's the social launch of your partnership. It needs to be sophisticated, Lydia. Think less. Hay bales, more crystal chandeliers. She opened her planner to a page with a glossy photo of a grand ballroom at an exclusive downtown hotel. The Grand Majestic. I've already put a preliminary hold on it for next October. Their catering is divine and the guest capacity is 500. We'll need it. I stared at her, my mouth slightly agape. 500 guests? A ballroom? Megan, that's not really what we were picturing, I said carefully. We were hoping for something much smaller, maybe 100 people at most. She waved her hand dismissively. Nonsense. Jacob has business associates, I have clients, and your parents will have their list. It adds up quickly. You can't start a marriage by offending half the people you know. Trust me, I know how these things work. I looked at Jacob for support, but he was intently studying the menu, as if he hadn't heard a word. That was the first time I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. Later, in the car, I brought it up. Jacob, she put a hold on a venue without even asking us. He sighed, his eyes fixed on the road. She's just excited, Lyd. She's trying to help. She's been talking about planning my wedding since I was 10. It means a lot to her. But it's our wedding, I insisted. Shouldn't it mean more to us? Of course it does, he said, reaching for my hand. And it will be perfect. Just let her help with the big stuff. We can handle the details. The big stuff soon became everything. Megan had a preferred vendor for everything, and each one was more expensive and more aligned with her grand, majestic vision than the last. The photographer she recommended specialized in stiff, formal portraits that looked like they belonged in a corporate annual report. The florist she suggested only worked with imported orchids and roses, scoffing at my idea of local wildflowers. Every conversation about the wedding became a three-way call where my ideas were gently but firmly steered toward her vision. She called it guidance. I called it hijacking. My best friend, Sophia, was more blunt. She's planning her own wedding, Lydia. You're just the stand-in bride, she said over coffee one afternoon. Sophia, a family lawyer, had a knack for cutting through the noise. And where is Jacob in all this? Is he a fiancé or a spectator? Her question stung because I knew the answer. Jacob had become a master of strategic avoidance. Whenever I tried to talk to him about Megan's overbearing influence, he'd say he was swamped at work or that he didn't want to create drama. He treated my concerns like they were minor inconveniences, small bumps on an otherwise smooth road. She has good taste, he'd argue. What's the harm in letting her manage the logistics? It saves us the stress. But it wasn't saving me stress. It was creating a different, more insidious kind. I was starting to feel like a guest of honor at a party I had no part in planning. The breaking point for that initial phase came when we discussed the guest list. I had painstakingly created a spreadsheet of my 75 closest friends and family. Jacob had about the same. Megan took one look at our combined list of 150 people and laughed. Not a mean laugh, but a breezy, dismissive one that made my skin crawl. She then produced her own list, a meticulously formatted document with over 300 names. I scanned it, recognizing maybe a dozen. The rest were her business contacts, old family friends I'd never met, and distant relatives of hers. Megan, I don't know any of these people, I said, my voice strained. They're not strangers, dear, she replied smoothly. They're your new network. A marriage is also a merger of families and social circles. My parents' friends aren't even on here, I pointed out, my frustration mounting. We'll get to them, she said, already making notes in the margins. But we have to prioritize. I looked at Jacob, pleading with my eyes. He just shrugged. She knows these people, Lydia. It's easier if she handles the invitations. It was then that the shadow of doubt began to feel less like a shadow and more like a total eclipse, blocking out the light of the future I had been so excited about. The diamond on my finger felt a little heavier, a little colder. The battle lines were drawn over something as simple as a piece of paper, the wedding invitation. I had found a beautiful design on Etsy from a small, independent artist. It was a simple, elegant card with a watercolor design of green eucalyptus leaves and clean, modern font. It was perfect for the intimate, nature-inspired wedding I still harbored a fantasy of having. It was personal. It was us, or at least, who I thought we were. I showed the design to Jacob one evening, my heart full of a fragile hope that this was one small detail I could claim as my own. It's nice, he said, his eyes barely leaving the stock market report on his tablet. Really clean, I like it. Emboldened, I told him I was going to order a sample. That was my mistake. I should have just ordered them and presented it as a done deal. Instead, I allowed an opening for Megan. The next day, Jacob casually mentioned to her that I had found invitations I liked. Her reaction was immediate. She called me within the hour. Lydia, darling, she began, her voice dripping with faux sweetness. Jacob mentioned your little Etsy project. It's a sweet thought, but we need to project a certain image. An online template simply won't do. She informed me that she had already scheduled an appointment with a bespoke stationer downtown, a place called the Gilded Quill, where invitations were apparently handcrafted on paper made from unicorn tears and cost more than my first car. I felt a surge of defiance. No, Megan, I said, my voice firmer than I intended. I've already chosen the invitations. Jacob and I both love them. There was a cold silence on the other end of the line. Jacob loves them. She repeated, her tone laced with disbelief. I'll have to discuss that with him. We need a unified front. The conversation ended there, but I felt a sense of dread creep over me. Later that night, Jacob came home looking tense. He didn't kiss me hello, he just put his briefcase down and loosened his tie. We need to talk about the invitations, he said, avoid. Ding my eyes. My mom made a good point. The ones she picked are much more formal, they fit the venue. I stared at him. What venue, Jacob? The venue she picked, the one we never agreed on. I thought you liked the ones I showed you. He ran a hand through his hair, a classic tell that he was stressed and about to fold. I do, they're nice, but they don't match. It's about creating a cohesive theme. Mom knows about this stuff. That was the moment something inside me snapped. It was the constant, mom knows best. The casual dismissal of my every opinion, the slow, creeping erasure of my presence from my own wedding. This isn't about a cohesive theme, Jacob. This is about the fact that your mother is planning this entire wedding and you are letting her. I don't want a grand ballroom and 500 strangers. I don't want stuffy, overpriced invitations. I want a wedding that feels like us. My voice was rising, filled with months of frustration. He finally looked at me, but his expression wasn't one of understanding. It was one of annoyance. Why do you have to be so difficult about this? She's helping. She's paying for a huge portion of it. Can't you just be grateful? Grateful? I choked out, incredulous. Grateful for being treated like a prop? I am not a child, Jacob. I am a 32-year-old woman. I am perfectly capable of planning my own wedding. The argument escalated from there, a tidal wave of resentment that had been building for months. I brought up the venue, the guest list, the photographer, the flowers. With every point I made, he grew more defensive, siding with his mother's logic over my feelings. The final blow came when he stood up, his face set in a hard, stubborn line I had never seen before. You know what, Lydia? This is how my family does things. We go big. We do it right. My mom has been dreaming of this day, and I am not going to ruin it for her over some Etsy invitations. You need to get over it if my mom wants to plan our wedding. The words hung in the air between us, heavy and suffocating. Get over it. It was so dismissive, so utterly contemptuous of everything I had been trying to express. He wasn't just asking me to compromise on a wedding. He was telling me that for the rest of our lives together, his mother's wants would always outweigh my needs. He was telling me my role was to be quiet, to be compliant, to get over it. I looked at the man I was supposed to marry, the man who had promised to be my partner, and I saw a stranger. Or worse, I saw a boy still tethered to his mother's apron strings, incapable of standing up for the woman he claimed to love. My anger dissolved, replaced by a sudden, chilling clarity. My voice was eerily calm when I finally spoke. No, I said, shaking my head slowly. I don't need to get over it. I looked him straight in the eye. If she wants to plan the wedding this badly, then she can marry you instead. The shock on his face was almost comical. He opened his mouth to say something, but no words came out. I didn't wait to hear them. I walked into our bedroom, closing the door softly behind me. I didn't slam it. This wasn't a tantrum. It was a conclusion. I leaned against the door, my body trembling, not from anger anymore, but from the terrifying certainty of what I had to do. I had just drawn a line in the sand, and I knew, with every fiber of my being, that he would not cross it to stand with me. He would stay on his mother's side, where it was safe and familiar. The silence on the other side of the door was my answer. He didn't knock. He didn't call my name. He didn't fight for me. He just let me go. And in that silence, I understood that our perfect future was nothing more than a blueprint drawn by his mother, and he was content to just follow her design, even if it meant building a life without me in it. That night, I didn't sleep in our bed. I slept on the sofa, the diamond ring on my finger feeling like a tiny, cold handcuff. The days that followed that fight were a strange, silent purgatory. Jacob and I moved around each other in the apartment like polite ghosts. We spoke only when necessary, in clipped, functional sentences about who would pick up the milk or whether the recycling needed to go out. He made a few half-hearted attempts at reconciliation, muttering things like, "We were both just stressed," or "Let's not make a big deal out of this." But he never apologized. He never acknowledged the profound disrespect in his words. He was waiting for me to get over it, just as he'd demanded. He thought my ultimatum was a bluff, a moment of feminine hysteria that would pass. He had no idea it was a verdict. It was during this Cold War that I started to truly grasp the scale of the deception. My anger had cooled into a sharp, focused curiosity. I needed to know just how far this had gone. Was it just a matter of Megan's overzealous suggestions, or was it something more calculated? The opportunity came on a Wednesday afternoon. Jacob had a late meeting with some international clients, and Megan was, according to a breezy text she'd sent to a group chat, at a spa retreat for 2 days. The apartment was empty and quiet. My initial plan was to pack a bag and go stay with Sophia, but something held me back. I felt a pull toward Jacob's home office. He was meticulous about his digital files, a side effect of being a financial analyst. He kept everything related to his personal life, finances, travel plans, important documents, in a password-protected folder on his desktop simply labeled Home. I had known the password for years. It was the anniversary of our first date. A date that now felt like it belonged to a different lifetime. My fingers trembled slightly as I typed it in. The folder opened, revealing a neat series of subfolders. My eyes scanned the list. Taxes, mortgage application, vacation 2024, and then one that made my blood run cold. W-plan final. My heart hammered against my ribs. W-plan. Wedding plan. The final suggested it was a done deal. I clicked on it. The folder was filled with dozens of files, PDFs of contracts, spreadsheets, image files, and Word documents. The file names alone told a horrifying story. Venue contract signed M.C. PDF, catering invoice deposit paid, PDF, floral agreement eleganza blooms, docx. I opened the venue contract first. It was for the grand, majestic ballroom, just as Megan had wanted. The contract was dated 3 months ago, just 1 week after we got engaged. And the signature at the bottom wasn't Jacob's or mine. It was Megan Cross, with Mother of the Groom scrawled beside it. She had signed a legally binding contract for a venue we had never agreed to, almost immediately after Jacob had proposed. I felt sick. I clicked through the other files, each one a fresh stab of betrayal. There was a catering invoice for a 5-course meal for 450 guests. The deposit of $20,000 had already been paid from a joint account I didn't know existed, in the names of Jacob and Megan Cross. There was a contract with her preferred high society photographer. There was an agreement with a string quartet for the ceremony and a 12-piece big band for the reception. But the worst discovery was a meticulously detailed spreadsheet titled Guest List Master Tiered, XLSX. I opened it. It was a planner's masterpiece, with columns for names, addresses, table assignments, dietary restrictions, and even a gift probability score ranked from A to C, but what made my vision blur with rage was the tier column. The guests were divided into Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. All of Megan's and Jacob's important clients and wealthy friends were in Tier 1. My family, my own parents and siblings, were listed as Tier 2, and my closest friends, the people who had been with me through thick and thin, including my maid of honor, Sophia, were relegated to Tier 3. There were notes in the margins. Next to Sophia's name, a comment read, Lydia's friend, teacher, place at a back table. Next to my parents' names, keep them away from the Sinclairs, they'll only talk about gardening. It was a cold, clinical, and insulting categorization of the most important people in my life. This wasn't a guest list. It was a strategic seating chart for a corporate networking event. Then I found the binder. Not a physical one, but a digital one. It was a 50-page PowerPoint presentation titled The Wedding of Jacob and Lydia, an Affair to Remember. The first slide was a professionally designed monogram with the letters J and M. My initial was nowhere to be found. As I clicked through the slides, I saw an entire wedding, planned from start to finish, without a single shred of my input. The color scheme was a gaudy gold and cream. The theme was old Hollywood glamour. There were photos of the bridesmaids' dresses she had selected, hideous, shimmering gold gowns that would make my friends look like Oscar statues. There was a slide for the cake, a 7-tiered monstrosity adorned with gold leaf and sugar flowers. There was even a slide titled The Bride's Look, featuring a photo of a supermodel in a tight, mermaid-style gown covered in sequins. It was the exact opposite of the simple, A-line dress I had dreamed of. Every page was a testament to her ego. It was Megan's dream wedding, not mine. The final slide was a mood board for the honeymoon, a 2-week cruise through the Mediterranean on a luxury liner known for its elderly clientele and formal dinners. I hated cruises. I had always told Jacob my dream was to hike through Patagonia. I sat there in the silence of the office, the glow of the monitor illuminating my stunned face. This wasn't just an overbearing mother-in-law. This was a conspiracy. Jacob had known, he must have known. The joint bank account, the signed contracts, he was complicit in all of it. He had been lying to me for months, letting me pin photos to my Pinterest board and look at Etsy invitations, all while in the background, a completely different wedding was being bought and paid for. He wasn't just avoiding conflict, he was actively deceiving me. The whole thing was a sham, our engagement, the wedding planning. It was all a performance to keep me placid and compliant until it was too late to back out. The love and partnership I thought we were building was an illusion. I was just a key component in a grand event Megan was producing, and her son was the willing co-producer. The feeling of betrayal was so profound it was physical. It felt like a stone in my stomach, cold and heavy. I carefully copied the entire W-Plan final folder onto a flash drive, my movements calm and deliberate. The time for emotion was over. Now, it was time for strategy. Armed with the digital binder of lies on a small, unassuming flash drive, my mission shifted. It was no longer about saving my relationship or salvaging the wedding. It was about confirming the depth of the deception and arming myself with irrefutable proof. I needed to know exactly what had been said and done in my name. Sophia, with her legal mind and unwavering loyalty, was my first and only call. I went to her apartment that night, the flash drive clutched in my hand like a talisman. As she plugged it into her laptop and we scrolled through the files together, her expression morphed from concern to disbelief, and finally to pure, cold fury on my behalf. "Lydia, this is a hostile takeover of your life," she said, her voice low. "The joint account without your knowledge is a massive red flag. The signed contracts. He has been gaslighting you for months." As a lawyer, she immediately saw it not just as a personal betrayal, but as a series of calculated, deceptive actions. "You need to be smart about this," she advised, her tone shifting from friend to professional. "Don't confront them yet. Gather more information. Find out how much they're on the hook for. Every bit of knowledge is leverage." Her advice solidified my resolve. The next morning, I began what I internally called Operation Due Diligence. I started with the vendors. My job as a marketing manager had made me an expert at adopting different personas over the phone, and I put those skills to use. My first call was to the Grand Majestic Ballroom. I dialed the events department, my voice bright and cheerful. "Hi there," I chirped. "I'm just calling to confirm a few details for the Cross wedding next October." "This is Lydia, the bride." The events coordinator, a woman named Patricia, sounded warm and accommodating. "Of course, Lydia, it's lovely to finally speak with you. Your future mother-in-law has been an absolute dynamo to work with. She has such a clear vision." "Oh, she's amazing," I lied smoothly. "I just had a quick question about the menu we selected. Megan mentioned she'd finalized it, but I seem to have misplaced the final copy." "Not a problem at all," Patricia said, and I heard the clacking of a keyboard. "Let's see, we have you down for the Imperial package. That includes the pan-seared scallops appetizer, the filet mignon main, the late-night poutine bar, and the 7-tiered cake from Legato Doré. All confirmed, and the 50% deposit has been paid." My stomach churned. I hated scallops. Jacob knew I was allergic to shellfish. "That sounds perfect," I said, my voice betraying nothing. "And the deposit?" "That was non-refundable, correct?" "That's right," she confirmed. "As per the contract, any cancellation now would result in the forfeiture of the entire $30,000 deposit." Bingo. I thanked her and hung up, a grim satisfaction settling in. One by one, I called the other vendors. The story was the same everywhere I went. I was the ghost bride, a name on a contract but a complete unknown in person. The florist at Eleganza Blooms gushed about Megan's exquisite taste, in choosing white orchids and gold-dusted roses, and confirmed a non-refundable $5,000 deposit had been paid. The band leader told me Megan had specifically requested no modern music, strictly classics, and that their $8,000 deposit was also locked in. The high society photographer, a pompous man named Anton, informed me that Megan had already paid in full for his diamond package to the tune of $15,000, which included a pre-wedding photo shoot. When I asked when that was scheduled for, he replied, "Why, this coming Sunday, of course. For you and Jacob. Megan said she would ensure you were both there." That was news to me. Jacob had told me we were having brunch with his aunt on Sunday. The lies were so layered, so comprehensive, it was breathtaking. The most damning piece of evidence came from a source I hadn't expected. In the master guest list spreadsheet, there was a tab for invitations. It listed the Gilded Quill as the stationer. I remembered Megan's insistence on them. I found their number and called, this time adopting a slightly frazzled, apologetic tone. "Hi, my name is Lydia. I'm so sorry to bother you. I know my future mother-in-law, Megan Cross, has been handling everything, but I think there might be a typo on the proofs for my wedding invitations. Is there any way I could get a digital copy emailed to me to double-check?" The clerk was hesitant at first, citing client privacy, but I was persuasive. "It's just my own middle name. I'm sure she just made a small mistake, and I'd hate for 500 invitations to be printed incorrectly." The clerk relented and promised to email the proof. 10 minutes later, it landed in my inbox. I opened the PDF, and my breath caught in my throat. It was a thick, cream-colored card with ornate gold calligraphy. It read, "Mrs. Megan Cross requests the honor of your presence at the marriage of her son, Jack. Ob Anthony Cross to Lydia Rose Miller." It was her invitation. She was the one hosting, the one presenting us. My parents, who had offered to contribute significantly, weren't even mentioned. It was the ultimate act of erasure. I saved every email, every note from every phone call. I created a new folder on the flash drive, titled Evidence, and meticulously documented everything: the non-refundable deposits totaling over $58,000, the secret photo shoot, the invitation that wrote my own family out of the narrative. The picture was now complete. This was not a wedding. It was a coronation for Megan, starring her beloved son, and I was merely the consort, chosen to play a part and look pretty. The weight of this knowledge didn't crush me. It galvanized me. The hurt was still there, a deep, aching wound, but it was being overshadowed by a cold, hard resolve. They had mistaken my kindness for weakness. They had assumed I would eventually bend to their will. They had underestimated me completely. As I sat in Sophia's apartment that evening, laying out all the new evidence, she looked at me with a mixture of horror and admiration. "They have no idea who they're dealing with," she said, shaking her head. "So, what's the plan? A dramatic confrontation? A tearful exposé at the fake photo shoot?" I shook my head. "No," I said, a slow, determined smile spreading across my face. "Nothing so theatrical. My campaign is going to be quiet, efficient, and devastating. They wanted to produce an event. Fine, but they're about to find out what happens when the star of the show cancels her contract." With the full scope of the betrayal laid bare, my mind, trained in marketing strategy, shifted into execution mode. The objective was no longer to win an argument or prove a point. The objective was a clean, swift, and total extraction from this toxic situation. The product, my future with Jacob, had been proven fraudulent. It was time to pull it from the market. The first and most crucial step happened almost by chance, a serendipitous email that felt like a sign from the universe. 2 months prior, before the wedding planning had descended into a complete nightmare, I had been headhunted by a rival tech company based in a city 3 states away. They were a smaller, more innovative firm, and the role they offered was a step up: Vice President of Marketing. The offer was incredibly generous, but at the time, I had turned it down. My life was here. My future was with Jacob. I had politely told the recruiter, a woman named Diana, that I was committed to my current role and life in the city. Now, everything had changed. On a whim, I found Diana's email and drafted a message. I was direct and honest, without being overly emotional. I wrote that my personal circumstances had changed unexpectedly, and I was now in a position to reconsider the opportunity if it, or something similar, was still available. I told her I was highly motivated and could relocate at a moment's notice. I hit send before I could second-guess myself, my heart pounding with a mixture of terror and exhilaration. To my astonishment, Diana replied in less than an hour. "Lydia," her email began, "your timing is impeccable. The candidate we hired didn't work out, and we were just about to restart the search. The position is yours if you still want it. We can even sweeten the deal to facilitate a quick move." She laid out an even better offer: a higher salary, a significant signing bonus, and a full-service relocation package. They would handle everything: the movers, the temporary housing, the works. It was a golden ticket, a pre-packaged escape plan. I accepted on the spot. We had a brief video call, and I signed the digital contract that same afternoon. My start date was in 2 weeks. The timeline was aggressive, but that's what I wanted. No time for second thoughts. No time for drawn-out goodbyes. With my professional escape secured, I turned to the personal logistics. Sophia, ever the practical lawyer, helped me map it out like a legal case. "First, financials," she said, scribbling on a notepad. "You need to separate everything. Do you have a joint bank account with him?" "Just one," I replied. "The one we use for rent and shared bills. My salary goes into my personal account." "Good," she said. "Tomorrow, go to the bank. Calculate exactly what you've contributed to that joint account for upcoming bills, like the last month's rent. Leave that amount in there and withdraw the rest. Transfer it to your personal account and then open a new account at a different bank. We don't want him having any access or visibility." Next on the list was the apartment. We were both on the lease, which was up for renewal in 3 months. Sophia read through the lease agreement. "There's an early termination clause," she noted. "You'll forfeit the security deposit, but you can get your name off it with 30 days notice to the landlord and the other leaseholder. It's clean." The P. Lan was simple. I would use the relocation company provided by my new job. They would be discreet and professional. I would schedule them to come on a weekday while Jacob was at the office. I would pack only my personal belongings: my clothes, my books, my art, the furniture I had brought into the relationship. Anything we had purchased together, I would leave behind. I didn't want any of it. It was all tainted. The next 10 days were a masterclass in covert operations. To Jacob, I was contrite and withdrawn. I let him believe his silent treatment was working, that I was slowly getting over it. I was quiet and compliant, which he mistook for surrender. When he reminded me about the brunch with his aunt on Sunday, I just nodded and said, "Okay." I let him think we were going, knowing full well it was the secret photo shoot with Antine. The thought of them waiting at the botanical gardens, dressed up for a photographer who would never see his bride, brought a small, cold smile to my face. While he was at work, my life was a whirlwind of secret activity. I spoke with the relocation company and scheduled the movers. I signed the lease on a new apartment online, a beautiful place with a view of a skyline I didn't yet know. I systematically went through the apartment, room by room, making small marks on sticky notes to indicate what was mine. I packed personal documents and sentimental items into a few boxes that I stored in the trunk of my car. I forwarded my mail to a new PO box. I called my parents and my brother and told them everything. Their shock quickly turned to furious, unwavering support. "Just tell us what you need, honey," my dad said, his voice thick with anger at how I'd been treated. "We'll be there." On the final Friday, the day before the movers were scheduled to arrive, I executed the financial separation. I went to the bank, followed Sophia's instructions to the letter, and moved my money, severing the last official tie between Jacob and me. It felt like cutting a cord. As I walked out of the bank, I felt lighter than I had in months. That evening, Jacob came home and suggested we go out for dinner. "Let's try to get back to normal," he said, offering a tentative smile. It was a nauseating performance. I agreed, playing the part of the chastened fiancé ready to make amends. We went to a quiet Italian restaurant, and I let him talk about his week at work. I nodded and smiled, a serene mask hiding the frantic, triumphant beating of my heart. As he paid the bill, he reached across the table and took my hand. "I'm glad we're past that rough patch," he said. I knew you'd see it was for the best." I just looked at him, at the man who had lied to my face for months, who was still lying to me now, and I felt nothing but a profound, empty pity. He had no idea he was having a farewell dinner. He thought he had won. He was about to find out just how much he had lost. Saturday morning dawned bright and clear, the kind of beautiful autumn day that felt like a mockery given the clandestine operation about to unfold. Jacob left early, around 8 a.m., for his weekly golf game with his father, a ritual as predictable as the sunrise. It was one of the many habits I knew so well, habits I was now using against him. He kissed my forehead on his way out, a casual, possessive gesture. "See you this afternoon, honey," he said. "Don't forget we have brunch with Aunt Carol tomorrow." "I won't," I replied, my voice steady. The moment the front door clicked shut, my entire demeanor changed. I was no longer the quiet, subdued fiancé. I was a general commanding a strategic retreat. I made a quick call. "He's gone, we're a go." The relocation team, a crew of 3 efficient and discreet professionals, arrived exactly at 9 a.m. in an unmarked white truck. I had already staged my boxes near the door. For the next 4 hours, we worked with quiet, focused energy. They expertly disassembled my desk, wrapped my paintings, and carefully moved the furniture that had belonged to me long before Jacob was in the picture. The apartment slowly began to empty, creating echoes where there used to be clutter. With every item that was carried out the door, I felt a layer of the past year being stripped away. The crew was incredible. They worked without judgment, their professionalism a calming balm on my frayed nerves. While they worked, I did a final sweep of the apartment. I gathered my toiletries from the bathroom, took my photos off the fridge, and cleared my files from the desktop of our shared home computer, deleting my user profile entirely. I was erasing myself from this life, piece by piece. I left the things we had bought together, the oversized leather sofa he loved, the 70-inch television he had to have for football season, the kitchen appliances we'd picked out at a department store. They were monuments to a shared life that had been a lie, and I wanted no part of them. By 1 p.m., the movers were finished. The truck was loaded with the entire contents of my independent life. My car was packed with my suitcases and a box of irreplaceable sentimental items. The apartment looked stark and hollow. The spaces where my furniture used to be were glaringly empty, like missing teeth in a smile. The lead mover handed me the final paperwork. "We'll meet you at the new address on Tuesday morning," he said with a respectful nod. I thanked them, and as their truck pulled away, I was left alone in the shell of my old life for the last time. My final act was the most symbolic. I walked into the kitchen and opened the drawer where I kept my jewelry box. I took out the beautiful cushion-cut diamond ring, the one that had once represented so much hope. It looked different now. It was no longer a symbol of love and commitment, but a token of a fraudulent transaction. I took off the ring and placed it squarely in the center of the cold, granite kitchen island. It sat there, sparkling under the recessed lighting, a lonely, brilliant star in a vast, empty space. This was where he would see it. There would be no ambiguity, no room for argument or negotiation. It was a statement, clear and final. I took out my phone and snapped a single, high-resolution photo of the ring sitting on the counter. I checked the image to make sure it was perfectly clear, the diamond sharp and the context of the empty apartment behind it subtly visible. Then I put my phone in my pocket. I wouldn't send it yet. The timing had to be perfect. With one last look around the apartment that had been my home and had almost become my prison, I walked out the door and didn't look back. The drive out of the city was surreal. With each mile I put between myself and that apartment, the knot of anxiety in my chest began to loosen. I was a fugitive fleeing a crime I didn't commit, a refugee seeking asylum in my own life. I drove for 2 hours before stopping at a small roadside motel for the night, not wanting to arrive in my new city before the work week began. That night, I slept more soundly than I had in months. The next morning, Sunday, the day of the infamous photo shoot, I woke up feeling calm. I let the morning pass. I imagined Jacob waking up alone, probably assuming I was out for a run or getting coffee. I pictured him getting dressed in the suit Megan had probably picked out for him. I envisioned him driving to the botanical gardens, checking his watch, wondering where I was. My phone started buzzing around 11:30 a.m., right when the brunch was supposed to start. It was Jacob. I ignored the call. He called again and again. Then the text started. "Where are you? Running late? Lydia, Anton is here. My mom is getting annoyed. Seriously, this isn't funny. Call me. Are you okay? I'm starting to get worried." I let him stew for another hour. Let him stand there with his mother, the two of them being humiliated in front of the pompous photograph. Finally, around 1 p.m., he sent a frantic text. "I'm coming home, something's wrong." That was my cue. I knew it would take him at least 30 minutes to get back to the apartment from the gardens. I waited 25 minutes, then I sent my reply. I didn't type a single word. I just attached the crystal-clear photo of the engagement ring sitting alone on the kitchen counter. I hit send. My phone immediately began to ring again, a frantic, incessant buzzing. It was Jacob. I silenced it. A string of texts flooded in. "What is this? Lydia, where are you? Where's all your stuff? Pick up the phone. This is a joke, right? This is insane." The messages were a torrent of panic, confusion, and rage. A few minutes later, a new number appeared on my screen. I didn't recognize it, but I had a good idea who it was. I let it go to voicemail. A message popped up a moment later. It was from Megan. The transcript was a garbled mess of fury. "You ungrateful little witch, you will not do this to my son. Do you have any idea the humiliation, the money?" I deleted it without listening to the audio. I blocked Jacob's number. I blocked Megan's number. I took a deep breath, put my phone on silent, and got back in my car. My work was done. There was a whole new city waiting for me, and for the first time in a very long time, the road ahead was completely my own. The first few weeks in my new city were a blur of organized chaos. The movers arrived on Tuesday as promised, and my new apartment, which had felt like a theoretical concept when I signed the lease online, slowly transformed into a home. As I unpacked my books and hung my art on the walls, I felt a sense of ownership I hadn't realized was missing for the past year. Every choice was mine: where the sofa went, which curtains to hang, what color to paint the accent wall. It was a small thing, but it was deeply symbolic. I was, quite literally, building a space for myself by myself. My new job was both demanding and exhilarating. The company culture was vibrant and collaborative, a stark contrast to the more rigid corporate environment I had left behind. My new colleagues were brilliant and welcoming, and I threw myself into the work with a passion I hadn't felt in years. I was no longer just a senior manager. I was the vice president of marketing. I was leading a team, shaping brand strategy, and making decisions that mattered. The role was a perfect fit, and the confidence I gained in the boardroom began to bleed into my personal life. I was rediscovering the capable, decisive woman who had gotten lost somewhere between choosing floral arrangements and placating her future mother-in-law. Of course, the fallout from my departure didn't just disappear. Through a mutual friend who I had sworn to secrecy but who occasionally provided intel, I heard bits and pieces of the aftermath. Jacob apparently had been a complete wreck. He had spent weeks trying to contact me, leaving desperate voicemails on my parents' phones and sending long, rambling emails to my old work address, which were, of course, never delivered. He didn't understand how I could just throw everything away. From his perspective, I had detonated our lives over a silly argument about invitations. He was either incapable of or unwilling to see the profound and systematic betrayal he had been a part of. He never once, in any of his second-hand messages, took responsibility for his role in the deception. It was always about how I had overreacted, how I had been unfair. Hearing this only solidified the correctness of my decision. You can't build a future with someone who refuses to see the truth. The real spectacle, however, was Megan. According to the reports, she had been apoplectic. Her fury was not that of a mother whose son had been hurt. It was the fury of a producer whose blockbuster event had been canceled by an unruly star. She was incandescent with rage over the public humiliation and, more practically, the massive financial loss. She had apparently tried to recoup some of the non-refundable deposits, bullying and threatening the vendors, but the contracts she had so eagerly signed were ironclad. She was out nearly $60,000 of her own money. Her grand social statement, an affair to remember, had become a costly affair to forget. The wedding was, of course, called off. There was no polite postponement announcement. Given that Megan had already sent out her Tier 1 save-the-dates, she had to make a slew of humiliating phone calls explaining that the wedding was off. The story she spun was that I was an unstable, flighty woman who had gotten cold feet. But Sophia, my brilliant friend, had preemptively done some quiet networking. As a lawyer, she knew a lot of people. She made sure a few key gossips in the right circles heard a more accurate, albeit discreet, version of events, one that involved a secret wedding binder and a bride who had been completely shut out of her own life. So, the narrative shifted from poor Jacob and Megan, jilted by a runaway bride, to a more whispered, intriguing story of a mother-in-law's overreach and a bride who had the courage to walk away. Megan's attempt to paint me as the villain had backfired, instead casting a harsh light on her own controlling nature. A couple of months after I left, a package arrived at my new office. It was from Jacob. My security-conscious receptionist almost didn't let it through, but I recognized his handwriting on the label. Inside was a box containing a few of the sentimental items I had left behind, a framed photo from our first trip, a silly souvenir mug. Beneath them was a long, handwritten letter. I almost threw it away, but my curiosity got the better of me. I read it. It was 10 pages of self-pity, confusion, and blame, masquerading as an apology. He wrote that he loved me, that he was lost without me, that his mother was just trying to give us the best. He ended by begging for another chance, asking me to come back so we could start over, just the two of us. The letter felt like it was from a different world. He still didn't get it. He was sorry I was gone, but he wasn't sorry for why I was gone. I folded the letter, put it back in the box, and left the entire thing by the office recycling bin. I didn't need those mementos anymore. I was busy making new ones. It's been a year now. Life is good. It's more than good, it's authentic. I've built a real community here. I have friends I go hiking with on weekends. I've joined a book club. I'm dating someone new, a kind, funny architect who asks for my opinion on everything from which movie to see to where we should go for dinner. It's a partnership, easy and respectful. Sometimes, late at night, I think about the Lydia who almost married Jacob. I think about how close I came to shrinking myself to fit into a life that was never designed for me. The escape was painful and terrifying, but it was also the single most empowering act of my life. This morning, I was standing on my balcony, drinking coffee and looking out at the sunrise over my new city's skyline. The sky was painted in soft shades of pink and orange. It was beautiful and quiet and completely mine, and I smiled because I realized I hadn't just changed my address. I had changed my entire forecast. The storm was over, and my future was nothing but clear skies.